Hi, and welcome to the Mediatwits number 145. I am Mark Glaser, Executive Editor of PBS MediaShift. It is coming up on Super Streaming Sunday, Super Bowl 49, happening in Arizona, but more importantly, happening on your computer screens and your apps. It'll be streaming live for free, 10 plus hours that NBC is offering. NBC, usually known for its paywalls online, will actually be offering it up free along with tons of programming, and even the halftime will be online streaming. YouTube has some plans to do its own streaming as well. We'll get into a big discussion about the digital and social aspects of the Super Bowl. First, a word from our sponsor. Running your own business requires focus, and so does parenting. Mediatwits podcast sponsor NextSpace created a place where parents could give their best quality of attention to both co-working space and childcare space under one roof. Learn more at nextspace.us/nextkids. And indeed, I am at NextSpace in Potrero Hill, San Francisco right now. I want to introduce you to our panel. We have Alex Leo joining us from Yahoo, Jeanine Poggi joining us from Advertising Age, Jennifer Jolly, USA Today columnist, Max Willen at International Business Times, Jefferson Yen, our producer in LA. So coming up on Super Bowl Sunday, we know we've had the social Super Bowl, we've had the streaming Super Bowl, we've had all kinds of different digital versions of it, and this year it seems like it's all about the streaming. I have to admit that I really watch, it's kind of one of those confessions, but I watch the Super Bowl for the commercials, not really the game, unless maybe it's the 49ers playing. And I think there's a lot of people like that. Jeanine, tell us about, we heard that NBC is actually having trouble selling ads. I mean, this is a massive audience, 110 million plus. Well, why are they having trouble selling ads for the Super Bowl?
Well, they're officially sold out as of yesterday. They now sold out of the game, so about time, but they did say it was a long road to being sold out, which is unusual, and it's definitely an indication of the overall TV ad market, which has been slower, and really we're seeing more advertisers waiting to make ad buys closer to need and shifting their dollars, out of TV into digital, into other platforms. So it's been a rough road for NBC. There was no question whether or not the Super Bowl was going to sell out. It was going to sell out. 112 million people watched the Super Bowl. There's no other platform like that for an advertiser. But in terms of waiting to see who would be in and who would be out and how much they would want to spend and allocate to the game, I think it was just a little harder this year.
And so advertisers, you're saying, are rethinking it in a way. I mean, there were less car companies that were advertising, and I guess they're just really have to rethink exactly how they're going to reach people if people are going to be not just watching TV, but on their phones and everywhere else. I mean, it's all about trying to reach people where they are, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, autos is the big one in terms of sitting out of the game. It seems like right now 6 nameplates are confirmed, and last year there were 11. So certainly a big cutback in the number of car companies. We'll see less car ads, which is probably good considering I think a lot of times they all kind of blend together. So we'll see less of that this year.
Especially if you don't need to buy a car.
It's funny that you say that because I think that there's some psychological thing in which ads for cars resonate with some people, and I'm just not one of them. I could not tell you the difference between any of those cars, but there's a brain chip that cell fires for some people, and they're the ones you want.
It also depends on the creative. I mean, something like Lexus this year, it's a pretty generic car ad. I don't think anyone's really going to be remembering it too much longer after the game, but sometimes they do something like, you can't forget the Force Volkswagen commercial from 2011. Yeah. So there are certainly some that stand out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you still see ads for car companies that seem to be focused on features and stuff. I mean, it seems like the things that people remember are more kind of emotional. You've got the Darth Vader thing, or imported from Detroit. They're not talking about suspension in those ads. They're doing something that'll make people laugh. Because fundamentally, the trick about Super Bowl commercials is that they don't move the needle on sales typically. That's kind of, there's been proof of this over and over again. They're great at generating awareness and 110 million people, but they don't always result in a bump in revenue.
Yeah, no question about it. A lot of it is about image and about being replayed online, so many times. I mean, it's not just the ads that you see during the game. I mean, they're being previewed online, they're being shared online, they're being voted up, voted down. A lot of the action really is happening on social media, isn't it?
Well, I mean, think about it. You're spending $4.5 million for a 30-second ad. You really want to get as much bang for your buck as possible. So, I mean, almost every advertiser is, if they're not putting out the full commercial on YouTube or on one of their sites ahead of time, they're putting out a teaser or some other like ancillary content to sort of drum up the buzz. All of them have hashtags. They're all tweeting about their spots now and have been pushing and promoting out on Twitter and Facebook and every other social platform. So really, I mean, if you're going to spend $4.5 million, you really want to make sure as many people are seeing that as possible, as many times as possible.
And what's interesting there, too, is I think it was interesting, Seth Winter, the ad sales guy at NBC, said that he wound up working with a lot of the advertising partners this year, just sort of, opening up the portfolio and saying, if you want to have a segment on the Today Show about your spot, go on ahead, They've really kind of made this, NBC and all the networks are now working to be as accommodating as humanly possible to extend the shelf life of these things.
That part was really interesting because you look, most of the early chatter that takes place has been on social media, but it's actually going a little bit back to TV because we did see, on The Tonight Show and on Today and on different, TV properties, brands actually debuting their spots on TV versus, on YouTube or on their microsites.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about the game within the game now. Facebook has their kind of trending Super Bowl page, and it used to always be you're on Twitter to kind of give the quick commentary on what's going on, but Facebook seems to be trying to get that back. Alex, what's your take on kind of the battle between social media? I mean, where would you be? Where would you be when during? Obviously, you might not care about the game, but you might care more about what's going on social media.
I professionally will be on all social networks during the game, so I don't think that's really a fair question. Facebook has been trying to catch Twitter on the things that it does well for a while, and what it does well, live events and their VIT, very important tweeter program. So this year Facebook launched, or last year Facebook launched Facebook Mentions app for celebrities, and this is their attack at live. So they will be doing live, kind of like more on the spot. Hopefully their algorithm won't take 14 hours to surface the Super Bowl posts kind of thing. They've updated their search page in the past year, in which you see not just the articles associated with those things, but live public updates coming in. So there are product upgrades they've made, but I think the big story here is really about the advertising and the marketing, that they will be segmenting you in real time about what you are posting and what they know about you, and letting companies target you very specifically with video and other rich media assets in real time.
Right, Jennifer, what are you going to be looking for when it comes to social media during the game?
I want to know what everybody's talking about, and we've kind of touched upon how it's going after, the ads are really needing to connect emotionally with people more than ever this year, because the widespread way in which we're consuming media these days. I watch 99% of my television on an iPad. So I can go a full year without seeing a single commercial if I'm lucky. So it's that one ad that everyone's talking about, that one product everyone's talking about. You mentioned the Volkswagen, the Darth Vader, those Budweiser commercials, and the puppies, and those are the things that we're going to talk about and remember. And the Doritos ads, so much buzz already this year. We're seeing a lot of the advertising and the content already shifting to YouTube. YouTube getting in on the mix with the sort of do-your-own Super Bowl commercials. So I will be paying a lot of attention to my Twitter feed as well as my Facebook feed. There's been a lot of mention of Tumblr this year as a player in where to be on and involved in Super Bowl Sunday. I'm not making that transition yet, but I really want to know what everybody's talking about. I want to know what's going to kind of tug at our heartstrings, as well as be the outrageous, really funny thing everyone's talking about.
And speaking of puppies, GoDaddy already got in trouble by selling off one of the cute puppies in its commercial.
And it was horrible. It was a horribly bad taste commercial. But GoDaddy, I mean, with
GoDaddy.
the pig,
there was no sex in it. It's a step forward for GoDaddy, right?
Right? Yeah, they're not known for their class and their taste, and that's sort of how they get all of the attention. But it is, when you've got the puppy bowl and half of the world turning into the puppy bowl, you've got to be a little more careful than that.
They were really trying to poke fun at Budweiser and trying to make fun of all the puppies that we see year after year in Super Bowl ads, and it failed. It really did, and there's just so many different elements in terms of the way they had the puppy and the sad scenario and this Cruella de Vil woman at the end. It was such a strange commercial.
But did it fail? Like, I'm confused by this because, like,
I think
did it fail because we're all talking about it and it's been like the topic of conversation, and GoDaddy just got like,
they saved the puppy by not putting an ad on, right? They just saved the puppy. They're our hero for not running a stupid ad.
Yeah, it's funny, though, because we're now also talking about, one of the first things that got published after the news broke was senior writer at Variety just said, I think this is a stunt, Like, that's the level of discussion that we're now having about Super Bowl marketing is that, I think, Jeanine, even on Ad Age, don't you guys have a poll going about whether this whole
we have a poll. I think right now it's at 53% of readers are saying that they think it was a stunt. I talked to GoDaddy, and of course, they said that it is not a stunt and it was not pre-planned, whether or not you choose to believe what you want. But, it's interesting. They really have made like a big change or attempting to make a change in their marketing. If you saw the commercial last year they did, was very, very different than all of the like sexual innuendo and, half-dressed women that they've had in the past. And they said that was their goal this year, was to keep going with like, hey, what does GoDaddy actually do, which you never got from any of their commercials before last year. And they said that was the point this year, and that they didn't realize it just wouldn't go over as well as it could have. And I guess now they're going to try something else. They said something that will make us laugh. So they have the benefit of both having us talk about it before and now waiting for us to see what the next spot is that they do. So
it's nice to have the message that they're helping out small business, but the small business in the case of that commercial was this woman who's going to sell off the dog. So they're basically enabling people to sell off dogs that are really cute and should be staying at home. So let's talk a little bit about YouTube. You mentioned, Jennifer, that now YouTube is getting into this. They have a deal now with the NFL. The NFL was really one of the last ones. Max, you wrote a little bit about this too. That the NFL is actually way behind when it comes to YouTube. What was their hesitation, and why are they now making a deal with Google?
Well, I think that it was the kind of thing that the NFL in the last couple of years has finally started to come out of its shell with respect to social media. This is now the third network or platform that they've joined after Twitter first and Facebook second. And I think that really it was just they finally came around because they got everything that they wanted. YouTube is paying them a pretty hefty licensing fee, after which, and eventually they'll be splitting advertising revenue with YouTube. All embedding is disabled, which enables them to kind of keep control over what and where their content goes, which is something that the NFL is very mindful of. And they're just seeing returns everywhere else, and they don't really want to be left out. At this point now, the only major sports league that isn't on YouTube is the Barclays Premier League. Everything else, the NHL, MLB, which was allergic to sharing its stuff on social media for a very long time, the NBA, which has been there forever and is now just a monster on there. Even the a lot of top flight soccer leagues like La Liga and the Bundesliga are on there too. So when a partner is offering to meet your terms unconditionally, it's pretty hard not to partner with them.
And now YouTube is going to have their own kind of halftime show. This is a tactic that a lot of other websites have taken before, but YouTube has its show. And I mean, YouTube just came off of this thing where they had special interviews with the president after the State of the Union that were pretty funny. I mean, what is this? Are people going to really be tuning in to YouTube's halftime show instead of Katy Perry, do you think?
It's certainly possible. I think that you see that there are the audience for the Super Bowl is so massive and so sprawling that they'll definitely take a bite out of it. I think if Discovery can grab 10 million people to watch the Puppy Bowl last year and achieve 10 separate trending topics on Twitter, then they'll be able to grab something. All the people that they've got lined up to be participating in this halftime show are monsters on social media. They'll be able to drive people in from a lot of different channels, and I don't think they're not gonna eat NBC's lunch or anything, but I think that they'll be encouraged probably by the returns of this this kind of step into what had typically been kind of a TV dominated moment.
I think it'll be a split of both. Like, people watch both. Why not? I mean, you have your iPad next to you or your phone next to you. If you're out at a party or you're home, you watch Katy Perry on TV, and then you're sitting next to you with YouTube open on your iPad. I think, that's the beauty of having multiple devices and being able to watch all of these things on multiple devices. You can just see both, so you don't have to miss out on much of anything.
Yeah, and the numbers are pretty big for people, having their smartphone out during watching, especially these live events, which, have become like almost fewer and far between. I mean, these are the appointment viewing, but people are going to make sure that if they're going to have to sit and watch something at a specific time, they're still going to be connected on other devices, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook said 69% of its marketing, its ad dollars now comes from mobile as of their fourth quarter earnings yesterday. So that's a huge shift from 4 years ago.
No question. And I'm curious about NBC now kind of making this free. We've complained over and over again about this kind of forcing people, and especially us cable cord cutters who couldn't watch things like this because we didn't have our credentials or we'd have to borrow some from someone. But they've kind of given up on that for this moment. What do you think, Jennifer, when it comes to kind of watching the stream live? What does this mean about kind of the state of pay TV, that they're using this to promote pay TV? I mean, is that a good strategy for them, or are they just kind of giving up in a way?
I think that it's introducing a lot of people to the idea of, hey, this is what you get when you pay a minimal amount to stream these TV shows on your iPad, on your tablets, on your computers, because they're really realizing that, hey, we're missing out on a huge amount of the audience, people who either don't subscribe to cable anymore, or don't want to go to a pub, a bar, or to their friend's house to watch this, and so I think it's definitely a sign of the shifting times. I've been locked in debate all day today about how you watch on your smartphone, because there's a growing number, especially younger and younger people, who are now streaming primarily to smartphones, not necessarily to tablets or laptops even. And for Super Bowl Sunday, because of the NFL and the deal that they've made with Verizon, you can only stream if your mobile provider is Verizon. So we've been talking all about, and I get sort of locked into these ideas of workarounds, and if you're on Wi-Fi, what does it matter? And I just, since we've been in this conversation, got word back from NBC that no, you'll be blocked. I don't know how they can block you if you're on a mobile browser. How can they tell? I'm not sure, but it's so interesting, because it all comes down to, as you all know more than I do, who's controlling the money. And at the end of the day, as this whole media world shifts and the advertising world shifts, how can the NFL, how can they really hold on to these ad dollars and control it with the world as open as it is for streaming all this media?
Well, it's interesting, though, is talking about this NBC streaming this for free. You aren't going to actually be able to see the commercials, though, that are airing on TV, because the ad load on the stream is different than the actual ads that run on TV. So if you are really tuning in and kind of are a fan of the game, but really want to see what people are talking about and watching the commercials, NBC set up a Tumblr page, and going back to conversation on Tumblr being used, so that the commercials will be there a few minutes after they air on demand. So if you are watching on the live stream, you can then go over to the Tumblr page and watch the commercials. Otherwise, you're not going to see the same commercials on this live stream compared to TV.
And that's a really good point. And a lot of people have been coming back since a column I wrote last weekend and saying, wait a minute, why am I not seeing this now? How does all of this work? And there's a lot of questions around that. And a lot of people, it's amazing because a lot of people are streaming, but they're not sure about Tumblr. I mean, I can't even tell you the amount of questions I've gotten about what is Tumblr? How do I get on there? How am I going to see these commercials? So as important as the Super Bowl for a lot of people, so are the commercials, and it's interesting that they've split them apart.
So
Alex can tell us more about Tumblr.
Tumblr, like full disclosure.
She's heard of it before.
Yeah, I heard of it before. I was at Yahoo and that owns Tumblr. So I think I shouldn't promote or deny the Tumblr, but if people are concerned about how to get there, it's a web address. So I think they should be okay.
I'm just telling you, and it's amazing to me to get the email, hey, you're on a computer, you're on email, ooh, but there's a big disconnect. And it's amazing how I'm a consumer tech columnist, and I can't even tell you the questions I get. I'm sure you all understand.
Totally.
But it's funny how many people have cut that cable cord. Now they're trying to figure out this whole internet thing, and there's still a big, wide missing world in there.
So this is what's really interesting to me about the cord cutters, because I'm a cord cutter, and we can have as many debates as we want about, like, well, it's actually more expensive if you're a cord cutter to get all the packages and blah, blah, blah. I think that's for a different day. But the interesting part of being a cord cutter is the things that I was missing out on were the live events. And what people always said to me was like, my friends who are interested in sports were like, I can never get rid of cable because sports, and like blah, blah, blah. So I'm surprised, we were talking about the positive reaction to this Google partnership and Google giving them everything they want, but like the other side of this, like the television deals and the cable deals, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more of a backlash from these companies.
You're talking about just the size of the deals that have happened in the past, that go on for years and years and years, to the point where they've spent billions and billions of dollars for rights to something, and I mean, hopefully they have digital rights in those deals too.
Well, it's funny because ESPN made a major fail during the World Cup, I believe it was, this past time, where they forgot to get the rights to put advertising on the digital streaming. So Fox sewed that up for the next several. But like, these are the kind of things that I'm like keep getting caught off guard by, and keep getting like, well, where was Time Warner Cable? Like, where was Cablevision in all of this? And like, are they freaking out? Like,
it'll be interesting to see how well the stream works too. I think it was ABC during the Oscars last year that the stream like completely conked out and people went crazy. So it'll be interesting to see, with the Super Bowl, if there's any issues in terms of like quality or overload or things like that.
Well, they got totally roasted the first time they streamed. They were the first network to stream it, and a bunch of analysts basically just said that it was a total disaster. And what's interesting too is that the Super Bowl is kind of its own animal, because you can, if you have access just to a television screen anywhere, and you can basically just walk outside your house somewhere in America and you'll find the Super Bowl playing on a television screen nearby. So it sort of caps the number of people that might be tuning in. But it is kind of uncharted territory. Nothing has ever really cracked the 3 million streams mark in American TV. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of performance they're capable of. Sorry, Jennifer, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was just, thinking about the DDoS attack on Xbox and PlayStation, and that's when you talk about streaming and a gigantic streaming event, it opens this whole conversation of hackers, and it's kind of easy to plug up the pipe when people are relying on something on a giant streaming event. So I haven't heard of anything happening, nothing in the works, but I'm always wondering about that as well. And it'd be a pretty big coup to mess up the Super Bowl.
No doubt about it. Well, we'll see what happens. It will be interesting to watch the game, I guess, for part of the time, but more interesting to be online, watching the streams, seeing what fails and what doesn't, and what ads stick and which don't. I want to thank our panel for joining us: Alex Leo from Yahoo, Jeanine Poggi from Ad Age, Jennifer Jolly from USA Today, Max Willens from International Business Times, Jefferson Yen, our producer. I want to thank NextSpace and NextKids for sponsoring the podcast. You can learn more about their program at nextspace.us/nextkids. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for the Media Twits. We'll catch you next week.